adventure in whatever comes our way. Yeah, darling, go make it happen. Take the
Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to Your Wheeling, No Two Ways About It here on The Watchdog. As usual, I'm your host, Mayor Glenn Elliott, joined in the studio by co-host Chad Thalman, Vice Mayor Chad Thalman. Sorry, I didn't want to forget that title there, Mr. Thalman. We've got a great show for you today. Well, I shouldn't guarantee that, but I think we got a great show today. Who's our guest coming up at 12:30, Mr. Thalman?
Yeah, after the bottom of the hour break, we have Jeffrey Morris from the Roxby Group. The Roxby Group has recently taken on some big projects in Wheeling, including the Scottish Rite in East Wheeling, the Monastery in Woodsdale, and most recently the McClure Hotel in downtown Wheeling. There's several other smaller projects they've taken on that I think Jeffrey's going to come in here and talk about. But I'm excited to hear his thoughts. I'm excited to hear what their plans are for some of these buildings, and I think he's going to be an entertaining guest here after the bottom of the hour break.
Sounds great. Can't wait to hear from you. I've had a lot of people saying, these Roxby guys, they're doing a lot, but who are they? So I think we'll give Jeffrey the opportunity to answer that question and kind of talk about their vision. I know they have sort of a short-term and long-term vision for some of these projects in the city just based on my conversations with them, and I'm looking forward to it. We had our first council meeting in a couple weeks yesterday. The first one, it was one of those rare 2-week breaks between council meetings because the first, I guess August was one of those rare months that has 5 Tuesdays in it, so we had a 2-week break. So we had our first meeting of September. Yesterday, any major recap items? It seemed like, we did a fair amount, or it was a thick agenda.
It was a relatively long agenda. There's a few things that stick out, Mayor. I think we approved 14 facade grants. The facade program was something that the previous city council started that you and I were both on. I want to say in 2017 we started that. Mm-hmm. And back in 2017, it was basically the central business district, downtown Wheeling, I think some center Wheeling, and I think
it was initially the downtown footprint, and then any historic district, which at that point or after had adopted design review guidelines, and that was really limited to the Center Market area and then Chaplin Street on 23rd Street.
Recently, the facade program was expanded from the central business district to pretty much every single neighborhood in the city of Wheeling. So if you own a building in the city of Wheeling that's a commercial building, contact the city, see if it qualifies for the facade program. If it does, you can get some help, some financial help from the city if you're going to fix up the outside of that building. Mayor, this has been a relatively successful program over the years. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the amount of private investment that has been partnered with the public investment, I think is staggering.
Yeah. Well, before yesterday, there had been more than $1 million of private investment sort of following a few $100,000 of city investment. So I thought it was a pretty good return on the city's investment. But just in the awards that we gave yesterday, I think there's about $120,000 of awards. It was by far our biggest single day of giving awards for this program. Based on the projects which were submitted to us, those awards represented about $766,000 of private investment, people putting money back into their buildings, the exterior facade or roofs of their buildings. And that's going to make a visible impact in the communities. What we've seen from this program is when neighbor A sort of invests in a property, the person across the street is going to say, hey, you know what? They're putting money in their building. It's time for me to do something to my front facade or whatever, make it look a little better. And it can be very contagious. I've seen it happen in other cities. It's encouraging to see that level of private investment going on right now.
Yeah, so that was a big thing that we did yesterday, 14 facade grants. The other thing that sticks out that I'm excited about is we're moving forward on starting an entertainment endowment fund.
Yeah.
And basically what this is going to do, and this is a partnership with the Wheeling, Ohio County Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as the Greater Wheeling Sports and Entertainment Authority. But this is going to allow us to have a pool of money where we can go out and book shows for the Capitol Theater, maybe even Heritage Port, West Banco Arena, whatever the case may be. So over the years, our understanding is that the entertainment market has kind of changed. Back in the 80s and 90s, a city Wheeling size got the big acts. Mayor, you were probably at the age back in the 80s that you might have gone to West Banco Arena.
I sense an age joke there, Mr. Thalman. But no, I've talked about this before here. During my teenage years, it was just a magical time in terms of live entertainment in the city of Wheeling. I saw at the then Civic Center more than a dozen shows of acts that were at the peak of their game, including seeing Guns N' Roses play on the just before their Appetite for or just like in the month after their Appetite for Destruction album came out in 1986 or no, I guess 1987. They were there. Aerosmith was there. Bon Jovi, Queensryche, Bryan Adams, even Rat. You can't forget Rat. They had that one hit song, Round and Round.
I don't know Rat.
Well, you probably never even heard of Rat. You're in a different generation, Mr. Vice Mayor. But there are all these big shows coming. And then what happened was was the way that the music industry finances live shows has changed a little bit. Star Lake Amphitheater came into being. A lot of the new, the A-list acts were asked to sign an agreement where if you played at Star Lake, you had to do a non-compete within a 60-mile bubble. So Wheeling was no longer kind of in the running for getting those big shows, because if they could get to Pittsburgh, if they get the Pittsburgh market first and foremost, that's where they were going to go. They weren't going to come to Wheeling. And so we had to start looking at lower sort of B-level shows or whatever. But even since, what we found is the way we finance shows or ask promoters to finance shows there is we put a lot of the risk on the promoter. If they want to go bring in a band to Wheeling, they have to kind of absorb a lot of the risk that if the show flops, and it's always a possibility that the show flops, that they're going to eat a lot of that. And so promoters have stayed away. They've said, you know what, we're going to go to other cities where we're not asked to take on all that upfront risk of the show just being a complete disaster. And so the idea here is to come up with some money, and I think the original goal is going to be for the city to put in $250,000 and for the CVB to put in $250,000. So $500,000 sitting in a fund. And then we're going to appoint a committee that was going to be able to make recommendations to the board of the Greater Wheeling Sports and Entertainment Authority on the shows we should go after, and say, here's a show we should go after. If they need X amount of dollars to make that show work in terms of offsetting the upfront risk, then they can do that. And then we can go out and bring those shows in and tell the promoters that, we're willing to take some of that upfront risk off your hands, but at the same time, if the show does really, really well, we want some of the profits back so we can replenish that fund. The idea is that fund does not shrink but grows over time, but it's there as a backstop to prevent shows coming and just losing everything. You can imagine a show coming and just it doesn't get well promoted, it doesn't get advertised well, for whatever reason, something happens and it's a big flop, and the person who's promoting that show's out, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Well, that's going to leave a sour taste in their mouth. They're not going to come back to Wheeling. We want to get those shows because cities up and down the river are getting them. The city of Marietta, which is smaller footprint than Wheeling, is getting some good shows. Youngstown's getting some good shows. It's a little bigger than Wheeling. Cities in Pennsylvania as well. We can be competing for these shows, but we need to change with the times. That's the idea here behind this new fund. And we have some ideas on people to staff the fund with. I think we're going to have 7 people on that fund. But we want a diverse group of people who can, who are more tuned into the music and entertainment and comedy live market than we are, because I'm a little bit, as you mentioned in the prelude here, I'm a little bit dated, not in with the hippest and newest and coolest music. Same thing with the comedy scene. I haven't been to a live comedy show in years. I used to go in my 20s a lot, but that's something we could do a better job of bringing comedy acts here as well. So I think it's a good step forward, but the devil's in details. We'll see if it works, but I'm very optimistic about it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, and this is something we've talked about for a number of years. How do we get more shows at the Capitol? How do we get more shows at West Banco Arena? And basically, you mentioned Youngstown, Marietta. I think Johnstown was also a city we looked at. We basically looked at these cities, said, what are they doing to get the shows? They're roughly the same size as ours. They have roughly the same population in their area. Why are they getting the shows that we're not getting? And this is one of the things they were doing. So we're going to move forward with the endowment fund. I'm excited that over the next few years, we'll hopefully get some shows that we otherwise wouldn't get. Mayor, another thing that was on the agenda is something that I think you and Councilwoman Rosemary Ketchum kind of took the lead on. This wasn't on the agenda, but the city manager announced that someone was hired for the homeless liaison position.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
This is a position that, it was somewhat controversial at the council level because there was a divide on council between those who thought that the city should undertake a new position as opposed to have that position be staffed in one of the various private organizations that does sort of include the homeless in their constituencies. The reason we pushed forward for this position was that we found that we have so many wonderful organizations in the city that each and every day their mission is to go out and address homelessness in our community. What we found, and this is just our opinion, but this is after having many meetings, including bringing in an outside consultant, is that these different groups weren't always working in lockstep with each other, and that they might have different or competing missions sometimes, and sometimes might even be working against the interests of the other, just based on the way that they go after the issue. What we found was that I looked elsewhere and found out, the cities that have had success on this issue have sort of a centralized person or department inside the city building, which is kind of like it's the interface to all these different organizations. It helps develop I think the most important thing to develop is a current database of homeless living in your community at any one point in time. If you go out and ask the different organizations in the city of Wheeling right now, how many homeless people live in Wheeling, you'll get as many different answers as organizations that you ask. There's not one number. And if you don't know what that number is on a given basis, if you can't, look at that number and then monitor it over time, if you can't sort of keep a record of, which individuals are getting treated or whatever dealt with by which organization, your approach is going to be, it's not going to have a coherent sort of strategy, and some people could fall through the cracks. There's opportunities for abuse of the system, all the above. The idea behind this position is, and importantly, it's a sunset position. We said, let's give this position 3 years to see if it can make a difference. At that time, the position expires unless the next city council, which will come in the late summer of 2024, decides to reactivate it. So for 3 years, the idea was to give this position sort of an opportunity to go out there, work with the different agencies, develop a database, know on a day-to-day basis who's homeless and who's getting what services, and make sure there's just some coherent strategy to get people out of these homeless encampments, off the streets, and into some sort of functional housing. That's the goal. It was a 4-3 vote on council, one of the few that we've had during our time there. We don't have a lot of 4-3 votes. You and I supported it along with Councilman Thorngate. Rosemary Ketchum, this was something that, she felt very passionate about, and I think she won the argument just by making the case. We'll see if it works, but the idea of having a sunset in there, I think, was a good compromise, that if it doesn't work, we haven't created a position that just sits there indefinitely without getting any results. So it's got a 3-year window on it, and we'll see if it can deliver.
Yeah, and I was happy that we put the sunset in there because, I, for one, am not exactly sure, I'm a little skeptical how successful this position is going to be, but I absolutely do think we have a problem with homelessness, and I absolutely am willing, and my vote proves that I think we should try something to see if we can reduce the number of homeless people living here in the city of Wheeling, not only to help them out, but to get people off, the jogging trail, the riverbank, the creek bank. I think it's a worthy cause to try to attempt to solve this issue, or at least reduce the number of homeless people we have living in the city of Wheeling.
The one thing about homelessness that I've learned from looking at this issue is it's almost a depressing, it forces you to confront the reality that there are some nails that you just can't hit with a hammer or whatever when you're in city office. You think that there's a solution to everything, and homelessness is an intractable, difficult issue with many different causes, and there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to solving it. And it's been very frustrating because, I like to think that, as someone in elected office, serving the city of Wheeling, that we can solve all these problems that we have. But it seems like homelessness has gotten worse. You talk to 10 people and you might get 10 different ideas on how to treat it. There's really not one accepted approach, except for having a cohesive strategy where all the different bodies in your city that are working towards this issue are if not on the same page, at least in active conversation with each other. So I think that's important.
And I hear the music coming on. Does that mean we're taking a commercial break? I'm told we are.
We're taking a commercial break. We'll be right back here on The Watchdog.
Visit fruithpharmacy.com and click the shop button. Choose your items or use our search bar to find a product. If you can't find something you're looking for, add it into the notes section on your order form. Our friendly Fruith associate will...
For all of your IT needs, visit OmniPerforms.com. Omni Strategic Technologies, the only IT company that the Watchdog trusts.
Texts, phone calls on all the big stories affecting us in West Virginia. So tune in weekdays right here on FM 98.1 and FM 97.7, The Watchdog.
Metro News is yours.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600, WKKX, Wheeling.
Hi, it's Hoppy Kercheval inviting you to join me weekdays, 10 till noon for Statewide Talk Line. We talk about the big stories affecting us in West Virginia. We talk with top political figures, sports personalities, and sometimes just us folks talking, all offering our opinions on what's happening today. 10 till noon, right after the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard.
For all of your IT needs,
All All right, we're back. You're listening to Real Wheeling. No two ways about it here on the Watchdog, 1600 AM. I'm Chad Thalman, Vice Mayor of the City of Wheeling, in the studio with co-host Mayor Glenn Elliott. Mayor, before we went to the commercial break, we were talking about the new homeless liaison position that the city recently filled. You were saying that homelessness is not necessarily an easy thing to solve.
It's not, and it's somewhat humbling that you have to recognize at whatever level of government you're at, you have to recognize that there are some things you can't solve. I was talking about this with Howard this morning because I've been watching the Netflix documentary on 9/11, and there was a thinking post 9/11 that America could go into Afghanistan and just fix it. Obviously we wanted to go in there to get revenge for what happened, but there was a sense that we could just fix it. And you watch this documentary, and now 20 years later with the pullout happening, I think there's a recognition that some things can't be solved with just a governmental solution. You can't win hearts and minds of people in a land and a nation across the world from you based on just very different formulas and histories and cultures and traditions. It's hard to do, and it's something that I think it's a problem at every level of government. We think that we can just solve things. And with issues like homelessness, you have to be a little bit humble and recognize there's not a quick fix solution. You have to be careful. But I think this position represents a sort of a careful approach with a backstop protection that if it doesn't work, it goes away without requiring a future council to eliminate the position. And then, of course, that'd be a headline saying, council zeroes out homeless position. Well, the way we set it up, the position goes away in 3 years, and it's only reauthorized if the council at that time, which will not consist of me because I can't run again, I won't be on the council, if the council at that time actually votes to reauthorize it.
Yeah, so one of the challenges with homelessness is I'm told that we have enough housing in the city of Wheeling, enough resources to put every single homeless person in the city of Wheeling into an apartment, into some sort of housing. But for whatever reason, we have a lot of people who are homeless, who are not, jumping through the hoops you have to jump through, who are not following the rules you have to follow in order to obtain this housing, in order to stay in this housing. Yeah. So what this position hopefully will do is work with these individuals, and each one is going to be a unique case and try to figure out what we need to do, what steps need to be taken to get the individuals who are homeless here in the city of Wheeling into some sort of permanent housing.
Absolutely. A couple of more things I'd like to mention before we go to the bottom of that break here is, if you've been downtown the last 24 hours and you looked at the 10th Street garage, you may see a new sort of paint job on it. And, we had the idea, our city flag, which was adopted back in 2018 as part of the Wheeling 250 year-long celebration, has 3 lines, 2 blue lines and a white line in the middle. And there were 3 lines there in that garage, 3 horizontal levels. We thought, that would look really nice as a flag. We had it painted yesterday. Looks terrific. If you have a chance to drive by, take a look at it. But that's your city flag right there. We're trying to get that flag sort of accepted and embraced more by the community. The city had a flag beforehand. It had been there for about 50 years, but nobody had ever seen it before. Until we got office, we asked for the city flag, and we found something in the broom closet. I think it was adopted back in the 50s or 60s when they built the new current city-county building. A really hideous sort of mid-century, just ugly flag. And we, Erin Rothenbuehler worked on the design we have now. She's works at the Ohio County Library. Wonderful sort of concepts behind it. There's a great story on what is in the flag and the different. It's got navigational stars, which kind of represent tell a story of Wheeling history. More than I want to get into now, but the flag is there for you to see on the 10th Street garage. I think it's a nice addition, and it gives me some ideas for other things we can kind of beautify with a simple paint job.
Mayor, also tomorrow, I believe at 10 a.m., there's going to be a groundbreaking ceremony for the new police headquarters. This is something that the City Council has been working on for several years to try to find better space for our police headquarters and fire headquarters. We are finally moving forward with the groundbreaking 10 a.m. tomorrow.
And this is something I really want to thank members of the last City Council, several of whom aren't currently on council now, because when we got elected, we took a tour of the police and fire headquarters. I'd never been in any of them before. Was just very underwhelmed at especially with the police department, just how cramped it was, how outdated it was, just how, it was a small, it was roughly 4,800 square feet for a department of 70 or so officers. It was just inadequate. We realized that we had to do something. So we pushed forward for a brand new public safety building to be at 10th and Market Street. We put it on the ballot in 2018 as a public safety levy. It got 54% of the vote, which in most states would be a resounding success.
I think in 49 states.
In 49 states. But West Virginia has this weird rule, I'd call it somewhat backwards, where for a city to pass a property tax levy requires 60% vote. Now, it's almost impossible to get 60% of folks to vote for anything. It's very rare in the history of politics to have anyone vote for 60%. So we fell short. So the word on the street was that the voters rejected that levy. I would argue that a majority of voters voted for it, but it didn't meet the statutory threshold. So we went back to Plan B, and there weren't a lot of great options under West Virginia law for cities to raise revenues, but we looked at the user fee as an option, which was not a perfect way to raise money, but was what we deemed to be the best one. And we took a very unpopular vote going into the 2020 election cycle on that to levy that $2 a week fee for city employees. And it passed to 5-1. I think one member of council was not at the meeting. But I'm very proud of that vote, even though I know it was unpopular, even though I know it didn't really help any of our standings in the polls, those of us who ran again. But it was a right vote. And now the current councils took those user fee funds, and we've come up with a solution, in terms of the OVMC campus was a great option to utilize one of those buildings for the police department. And we're going to be moving forward soon for a new fire station as well. So, it's been a long journey to get here, but I'm very satisfied with where we are, and encourage folks to stop by the new police department headquarters location at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and the user fee vote was a controversial vote, Mayor. As you said, we had a tax increase that literally went into effect 6 months before an election. We didn't move forward with that because we thought it was going to help us at re-election time. We knew it was probably going to hurt us at re-election time, but we moved forward with the user fee because we thought it was the right thing to do to get the police a new headquarters, to get the fire department a new headquarters. And half of the user fee money also goes to infrastructure. That's something that I think hasn't been reported on very well. It's kind of been glossed over by a lot of people when we talk about the user fee. Half of it is going to a new police and fire headquarters, and the other half is going to infrastructure, which we desperately need, whether it be paving, road slips, or all kinds of other things that an aging city has to address.
A part of the issue with the user fee infrastructure portion being glossed over is that the first project we asked staff to come up with a list of projects based on their urgency, and a lot of the early ones were sort of small slip and road repairs that if you didn't live in that neighborhood, you probably wouldn't even notice them. Especially Glenwood Road got some major slip repairs, but those things are absolutely critical for the people that live in those neighborhoods. They may not be citywide issues, but we felt in talking to staff that those were ones we had to target first. Going forward, though, we're going to have some more visible projects, probably none more visible than Wheeling Hill. The city and state entered into an agreement back in the 60s that the city is responsible for maintaining that sidewalk which runs up and down Wheeling Hill. When I first got elected, I thought that was a state responsibility because that sidewalk's in pretty rough shape right now. In fact, we had to close it down because of safety risks. But that's actually our responsibility. So that's going to be one of our as soon as the state's done with the I-70 project, and we don't have all that traffic diverted on that road, that'll be a project that we anticipate, going forward for in the next couple of years. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be an important project to get done, though, really to sort of reactivate that pedestrian thoroughfare up that hill.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's time to take the bottom of the hour break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Jeffrey Morris from the Roxby Group talking about all the projects they're taking on. Stay tuned in.
Local health.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up, do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
Over the years, you've brought opioids into your home. They helped when you were in pain, and you held on to them just in case. But holding on to opioids puts your family at risk. Learn more at www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
Hi, it's Hoppy Kercheval inviting you to join me weekdays, 10 till noon for a statewide talk line. We talk about the big stories affecting us in West Virginia. We talk with top political figures, sports personalities, and sometimes just us folks talking, all offering our opinions on what's happening today. 10 till noon, right after the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard.
Hello, everyone, from the Watchdog. I'm the storm tracker, Darnell Foster, with a look at your local weather forecast for your Wednesday. Mostly cloudy with showers, maybe a rumble of thunder, a daytime high of 73. Mostly cloudy through the overnight with temperatures down to about 55. Clouds and limited sunshine for your Thursday. with highs in the lower 70s. Have yourself a great day, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Your Wheeling, No Two Ways About It, here on the Watchdog, 1600 AM. I'm Chad Thalman, Vice Mayor of the City of Wheeling, in the studio with co-host Mayor Glenn Elliott, and we're joined by Jeffrey Morris of the Rockstreet Group. Jeffrey,
All right,
thanks
guys.
for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, you guys are taking on a lot of projects, whether it be the McClure Hotel, the Scottish Rite in East Wheeling, the Monastery in Woodsdale. You're doing some COVID testing in the old OVMC building. I know you have some smaller projects you're taking on. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your projects you're taking on, why you're taking on these projects, why now, why Wheeling? What do you have?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, people have jokingly said, oh, you're doing the build it and they will come model. Yeah. There's actually sort of evidence that that works so long as you're consistent and in it for the long haul. So we are absolutely doing that. We're feeling the momentum. We do have a lot going on, but we have a really great team. And, we're working on getting them all of the structure and the parts and pieces to be able to finish these consistently and move on to the next set in the coming years.
So you have numerous projects. Is there a favorite that you have? Is there one that you're particularly excited about or one that you're pushing forward a little bit more than the other ones?
I mean, we're focused primarily on completing parts of the Scottish Rite for event and entertainment use, and then the hotel, the McClure. Those are the two buildings that we are focusing on with the majority of resources at the moment until they are sort of set and operating. As far as labs is concerned, we now have the DHHR contract for Hancock to Tyler County. So the 6 northern counties were processing all of the county health department PCR diagnostic tests. We've started to do some for WVU continuous care. We're doing all of the school surveillance testing. So those are the two parts that we're doing. My personal favorite is the monastery, always will be. Yeah.
Now, as far as the COVID testing goes, how many tests are you guys doing in a day or a week? What's that consist of?
I think we're doing about 700-ish out of the OVMC lab a day at the moment. That's been ramping up day after day, and we've only just started taking in the county tests for Brooke, Wetzel, and Tyler County. So we've sort of gone from 3 counties to 6 counties over the last week. So
Now, if somebody doesn't use you, they have to send their test to where? Is it Pittsburgh? Is it Charleston? Who else does testing?
there's one other primary state lab in Charleston, Q Labs, that has been doing it for a while, and they have, really consistently executed. There's a lot of tests, and they were handling the majority of the state. We've sort of taken off the northern 6 counties, and we're focused on that. We're not going to expand into other counties because we want to have quick 24-hour max turnarounds. And we've been, with the exception of a day last week with a supply shortage issue, we've maintained about a 12-hour turnaround time.
Now, you mentioned the McClure Hotel as one of the things you guys are moving forward with. I think anyone that's been in downtown Wheeling in the last few weeks can see that you guys, almost immediately after purchasing it, put a fresh coat of paint on it. Yeah. So what are some of your plans there? What's your vision? How long is it going to take to get to that vision?
Yeah. The total plan is roughly 18 months, and we're a couple months into that now. And it's a full 40-year sort of gutting, new bathrooms, upgraded rooms, upgraded common areas, hallways, just a full overhaul, new roof, some food and beverage and entertainment venues. And then we're currently working on the apartment tower on the interior, so 31-bedroom apartments, which will draw some more people downtown.
And it's safe to say that the prior ownership did not put a lot back into that structure while they owned it.
That's putting it lightly, yeah. There was a lot of money that came out of it and, sort of fled the city because it was profitable for quite a few years, very profitable during the natural gas boom. And as soon as that sort of dropped off, there was no investment made in. In the first couple of weeks, even prior to us officially taking deeded title, we were having the HVAC systems repaired that had been out of commission in certain parts of the building for years. So for that first big weekend of us owning the building, which was Blues Fest, people noticeably who had been coming to Blues Fest for years said, wow, you've done a lot already.
Yeah, I think the previous owners were from Texas, if I'm not mistaken. So it's nice to see, some local owners now they're going to put money back into that building. How many rooms are there? And is it 18 months to get every single room redone, or what's the process?
Yeah, so right now we're obviously painting the exterior white. Going from sort of a deep color that was also dirty to stark white requires, we're up to I think 3 coats at this point to get rid of all the shadow lines, but it's coming along. On rain days, we have 2 floors that we've
Living in groups, but this is now virtually.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so on rain days, we have rooms available that we send the paint crew inside, and they're whitewashing everything. So stark white. We're kind of going with a very clean, bright, neutral design that we're going to use art, both local and brought in to sort of be a bit of a C21 museum hotel kind of vibe, like very art-centric, unique spaces.
Now, there's one thing on the roof of that hotel, which I've noticed. I believe I was in the Wheeling Pit building, and you have a nice view of the entire city. You can see the McClure. But you have like what could be, I guess, a rooftop bar restaurant that was never really activated. Is that something you guys have a plan for?
Yes. The close took longer than we expected. We were going to get that partially opened for the summer until about October by removing all of the glass, which needs replaced anyway, and having it open air, then closing it for a long-term renovation. Got too late in the season, and so we're going to wait to do that full renovation over this winter and have it opening fresh and permanently in the spring.
Now, what were some of the issues? Was there a fire escape issue? Or what were some of the issues that caused the previous owners never to really activate that rooftop area?
I honestly have not gotten a clear answer, and what I've kind of deduced is a lack of vision and confidence in the city. Bernie Battistelli was the one who owned the McClure, tore down the original building at the corner of 12th and Market, and then built that sort of 1980s structure. He got to that top floor, and I think a combination of ran out of money and maybe ran out of energy, and then I believe he got sick. His daughter took over for several years. It ended up going bankrupt and then changed hands a few times. No one has gone up there in the last 38 years and seen anything other than a storage room, which is bizarre because you have, I mean,
it's a commanding view of a lot of part of the city.
Yeah,
and,
it's
with windows all around.
Yeah, and it's so central, and it's a lot of glass. I mean, they're big windows. They're 12 feet high, and they're just wall to wall.
And what would your plan be for that space? The restaurant, some sort of a bar, like an event space? What are you guys thinking?
I think we're thinking cocktail lounge with light food service. Something to get people up there, because it is a big space. You know, it's the full footprint of the building. So it's about 50 by about 120. So it's 6,000 square feet. I mean, it's a big area. If you just had a restaurant, I feel like it would always feel empty, which people don't like. So we want more high traffic gathering up there.
Now, for that rooftop area, do you anticipate by the spring, next summer, what's your time frame to get that area?
Yeah, my goal would be by the spring, maybe in and around the Mother's Day mark, sometime in May, maybe Memorial Day. Fingers crossed on that one. But I will say the city building department and fire regulations, they have come as a group all together to the McClure a few times to talk not just about that project, but all of our projects, and sort of all in the same room, fire, building inspection, electrical, health department, fog. They've all come in as one group, and that's working out so well. It's been just so much easier, and we know them all. It's been pretty good.
I think one of the things that I've noticed about you guys is you try to take a proactive approach. You bring them in early and what a lot of building owners have done is they make a lot of changes, or they come with all these plans, and then they bring the department in to say, hey, like, this is what I want to do, but they haven't had a conversation first to even identify what the big issues is that you might trip up on, and then it becomes an adversarial relationship, and that's not anybody's interest. And, we've certainly, I think we've tried to press upon, city staff that, there would be a lot of old buildings that really are difficult to make work in 21st century codes, but we have to be as flexible as we can, without making sacrificing safety needs, but we need to be flexible. We can't, just always look at things rigidly, because buildings like that one, a lot of buildings in the city, weren't always built in a way that works the way you're building new today, but we have to make them fit. And, it is very, very gratifying on my end to see, I've been saying for years, we need an active downtown hotel that, is going to bring a sort of, if any of our downtown businesses, have visitors coming in, that they would look to that place as an option for folks to stay. I don't think they've done that for years. I don't think we've had that sort of downtown commerce that sort of a nicer end hotel is going to draw. And I think it's just going to be a nice addition. And not to mention, a sort of space like you're talking about on that rooftop space. I think that'll be something that really doesn't exist right now. We don't take advantage of our rooftops in Wheeling. We have a lot of great views up there.
And that's something that you and I share.
I sit on my roof a lot and say, wow, someone really needs to do something with that roof. And it's expensive, it takes time, but you go to a lot of bigger cities and people love the rooftop views. They love that being outside, and it's something that I think we have a complete blank canvas in the city to take advantage of a lot of these rooftops.
Yeah, I mean, they're all solid built steel reinforced masonry structures. So having a city draw of all of these floating roof decks just makes great sense to me.
Yeah, I think the McClure roof deck is going to be great. I think the Wheeling Pit building, I think the developer there has some plans to activate that rooftop. I want to say there's another building maybe on the waterfront, Mayor, in the owners.
I believe the Barry Supply building has plans to take advantage of the rooftop as well. And that would be, directly overlooking the port and the river, but the sunsets there. It's just an underutilized, unappreciated aspect. We have so many rooftops, and I didn't appreciate it until I ended up owning a building and spent some time on the roof just looking around saying, wow, that view will be great, that view would be great.
Same.
And it's just something that I think people will definitely be inspired to go visit these locations, and it's something different that they don't have right now. And I want to touch on one point. I don't know if we have a break coming up here or not, but one point I wanted to touch on was sort of the forward-looking aspect of if you build it, they will come. If you look at back at Wheeling history, and I've read a lot of old newspaper stories up around the time that my building was built back in the 1890s, people were looking forward, not back. And that's what you guys, we'll pick up on that here quickly after the break. But you've been listening to The Watchdog. You're Wheeling, no two ways about it. We have Jeffrey Moore, CEO of Roxbury Development on. We'll be right back.
Shoots up through the stony ground. There's no room.
Morning Show with Howard Monroe for Talkline. I have guests, conversations, texts, phone calls on all the big stories affecting us in West Virginia. So tune in weekdays right here on FM 98.1 and FM 97.7, The Watchdog.
Are you traveling? Working a little bit too much? Is your fur baby starting to get a little shaggy? Let Dirty Paws be your one-stop shop for all of your pet care needs. Stop in and see us at 202 18th Street or give us a call at 304-639-7754 to schedule your appointments for dog grooming, doggy daycare, and dog boarding today.
Covers West Virginia like Metro.
As first responders, we focus a lot on the physical demands of the job, but what about the mental demands? As a new Concord police chief, I know firsthand that it's not normal to see what we do, take it home, and deal with it on our own. That's why I encourage you to seek help if you need it. Visit the Ohio Department of Insurance's website, insurance.ohio.gov, or call 800-686-1526 to speak to experts who can help you understand what mental health benefits may be in your health plan.
As the world gets back on track,
the Mountaineers are climbing.
And the final seconds coming off of the clock here at the 62nd Liberty Bowl.
And the best is yet to come.
And with both fully online and on-campus evening formats available, pursuing your degree at ODU also fits your life. Classes are forming now. Get started at ohiodominican.edu. That's ohiodominican.edu.
Show.
He's going to will score 6. Fires it toward the end zone. Touchdown, West Virginia.
Join us all season long on your home for Mountaineer football. MSN, the Mountaineer Sports Network.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Drew Wheeling, No Two Ways About It, here on the Watchdog. We're in the studio with our guest, Jeffrey Morris from the Rock Street Group. If you have any comments or questions for Jeffrey, feel free to call or text 304-214-1600. Jeff, we've been talking about some of the big projects you guys are taking on, whether it's the McClure Hotel, the Scottish Rite Building, the monastery. We've been focusing on the McClure a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about the monastery in Woodsdale and the Scottish Rite Building in East Wheeling. What are some of your plans for those two buildings?
Yeah. So monastery is because of parking and being a low impact in the neighborhood, which was one of our promises when we got the rezoning. Now that we have the Scottish Rite, which will be food, beverage, events, entertainment, sort of party palace, so to speak, to draw people in. Since we can have big, louder events there in more of a downtown city setting, the monastery can be for much smaller, quiet events. So sort of a country place to go and relax and not be loud and huge numbers, and then put Scottish Rite as the hub to do the larger, louder, more vibrant things.
Now, you mentioned earlier in the show that the monastery is kind of your favorite project, but if you got the McClure, you got the monastery, you got the Scottish Rite, you mentioned the McClure about 18 months to get it to where you guys want it to be. What's the time frame for the Scottish Rite and the monastery?
So the Scottish Rite is actually the furthest along because it was built to last 600-700 years with maintenance. And
it was built right after the previous building burned down, which I think is an interesting fact because they overbuilt that building.
They overbuilt the building. It's 82,000 square feet if you include the basement of steel reinforced concrete structure. There's not a piece of structural wood in it. The floors, even on the top floor, are 18 inches of concrete. So I mean, it's just a brick in the middle of the city.
Yeah, it's a wonderful building that I didn't get a chance to go in until probably 2014 or 15. I had a chance to take a tour, and from 14th Street, you don't appreciate what it holds inside. I mean, the big spaces, the Grand Ballroom on the second floor, the library on the first floor. Then you get up to that fifth floor theater, and at that point, I'm normally breathless because you haven't believed what you've already seen. Then you get to a theater, a two-story theater on the top of a building. Mm-hmm. Who does that?
I know.
Yeah, and no, it's a wonderful project, and honestly, it's the type of building that is difficult to make economic sense if you're looking strictly office or residential. It's not cut up that way.
Right.
And when you brought your vision to it, I thought this has a chance to actually work. So tell us a little bit about how that building might be utilized in terms of the different spaces inside.
Yeah. So it is square footage wise and ceiling heights. So it's 5 technical floors, but it's 120 feet at the peak. So all of the floors are very, very high. It's big and lofty, and there aren't a ton of rooms. 82,000 square feet, that's 2 acres under roof. Mm. You would think it would have hundreds of rooms. It has about 20 actual rooms.
Yeah. And you could play basketball in a few of them. Comfortably.
About 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So that said, we went through it, and you and Jack Yost were the first people to take us through when we initially looked. And it was breathtaking. I spent my entire life going through old buildings, and each one's unique and has a character. And but you start to see some commonalities, building to building, even country to country. You're not surprised that much anymore, as you would know, being through so many.
I've been through a lot of old buildings, but what's neat about that one and what is unique about it, I think, is that it's been under the same ownership for its entire life, more than 100 years. And while it wasn't always kept up to all the modern day codes, it was well maintained throughout. So many different buildings have fallen into different ownership, and then they just quit taking care of different floors. So they may still kept the first floor active, but floors 3 and 4 have been vacant since the 70s, and the water's been coming in, doing all the damage. That never happened at Scotch, right? Whatever damage was done was addressed. And that's why it was such a unique project, because it was just like this time capsule of a building. It kept up to, I mean, not up to date, but I kept maintained and well manicured for more than 100 years, and now to have another chance at a new existence, it's just an exciting story.
Exactly. And so like part of the trying to make it financially viable, back to your original, and how to make it work, you don't go in there and start to mentally put up walls for hotel rooms or, you know, walls for offices or take walls out. I mean, we're literally polishing the inside and adding sort of detail to areas that they didn't put it in the past. But we're keeping all of the rooms as they are and restoring them and using them for the same purposes. So the ballroom on the second floor, as you mentioned, 7,500 square foot ballroom that we're going to use as a ballroom for weddings, events, all sorts of things. The theater upstairs, I mean, right now there's a Wheeling Symphony brought all of, their sort of chairs and stands, and they're doing interviews tomorrow for assistant conductor. There are 4 candidates who are coming in, and with a small chamber orchestra, they're auditioning. They're doing it in that room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's exciting.
Yeah. And
wow. We've got a few minutes left, and I did want to touch on a couple things, because when I've told people about your projects, people say, who are these guys from Roxby, and what are they doing? Where'd they come from? You're from the area. You're from the Moundsville area, correct?
Yeah.
What's the story of Roxby, and how did you guys start getting interested in Wheeling real estate the way you have here in the past year and a half or so?
Yeah. So Roxby, the name proper, came from my grandparents' names, who were real estate developers, my mom's parents, Rox and B. Simmons. And I just put their name together. I thought that was nice. And it's a collection of people who, all love Wheeling, love these old buildings, and love the idea of rebuilding a community that we're all either from or believe deeply in. And so, Natasha Smith, we went to high school together. I've known her since I was 12. She's our chief scientific officer, and she runs the labs, and she is absolutely killing it as far as turnarounds, consistency, customer service. I mean, she is building something that's going to last and grow. Sarah and Becca are the restoration side. They built the window shop, and we're just now getting that operational. I like to find people who are into cool things that employ people, and then I can source the money from, or the capital from investors from all over that I've, sort of slowly over the years gotten to know, and, they invest in this kind of thing.
And that's the question I hear all the time is Roxby Group, where are they getting their money from?
Yeah. Private investors currently. We're rounding the corner of getting to the point where we would qualify for sort of more conventional financing, which has always been the goal to get to that point. But on the front end, yeah, you have to have people with either a lot of passion that are willing to invest from a passion perspective, or a lot of money where it's high risk, high reward, and the latter applies to most of our investors.
And these investors, are you selling them on Wheeling, or are you selling them on you, or are you selling them on both? On you with your ability to make things happen at Wheeling? I mean, what's the pitch to these investors? Because it's not, I'm sure it's not an easy pitch, right?
It's not.
Yeah.
I've had to kiss a lot of toads, so to speak.
Yeah.
We do the same thing with the
Yeah, it's both, honestly. I mean, if the core skeleton of this area weren't already built to accommodate what I'm trying to sell, which is, an Asheville, a reborn
Asheville
city.
is something that I've looked to for a long time now as a model of
and
what
Greenville
we can be.
too.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, we didn't even know each other, but I did a development in Greenville, South Carolina, and got to see that firsthand.
It is.
I think you've spent some time there, and really,
I've actually met with the mayor down there, Mayor Knox White, and he toured me around town, and it was a wonderful experience just to get to, like, Greenville is considered one of the ultimate examples of urban redevelopment for an old historic town.
Yeah.
But Greenville's almost too manicured, too perfect. You know, I look at Asheville, which is a little grittier. It's got a music edge, a little harder edge.
That's right.
I see Asheville as something where we can emulate more realistically. I don't know if I ever see us being in Greenville, although I love Greenville, but Asheville's a place I think I'd want to live. It's just a little grittier.
And I agree wholeheartedly. And Wheeling is not going to be that perfectly pristine, polished thing that is almost like a North Korean facade town. You know, it's this is naturally going to be
Every blade of
grittier.
grass in Greenville looks like it was designed to be where
That's
it
right.
is.
And the difference in my mind between Greenville and Asheville is Greenville had BMW, and
Michelin plant right next
right,
door.
and so it was huge companies.
A
That
lot of
developed
high-paying
it.
jobs right outside the city.
That's what happened to Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah.
That's why Pittsburgh looks the way. Whereas Asheville had a beautiful structure, Biltmore. We have our own Biltmore, which is Ogilvy. So you know that's.
It's a little more organic growth.
It's more
a little,
organic, which is more like the short north in Columbus, which I prefer. You know, it's just a more pleasant place to live and stay.
Now, Jeffrey, we're running out of time here, but you traveled all over the place, but you came back to the Ohio Valley. What brought you back here?
The monastery. That building, I thought I'd come for 18 months, 2 years, however long it took to do that, and then I'd move on somewhere else. I never wanted to permanently move here, but then COVID sort of completely shifted that. And then Glenn talked me into to checking out downtown and looking into it, and honestly, that sort of like, hey, this can be done, and then really seeing Wheeling for what it is, and not
or
from
for what it can be, which I
can-
think is what has been missing.
What it can be, and not that lens that you have growing up here, which is Wheeling is never going to happen.
It's been one of my frustrations, the people who, I mean, you see it on the Members of Wheeling page, who look at Wheeling in the past tense a lot and lament. And, you know, people like what you guys are doing are not looking at the past. You're looking, I mean, you're appreciating the past. You're taking the past. You're taking what the past left behind in the present, but you're looking for future solutions to all these things. And that's what it takes. So we're probably out of time here. One quick, we've been talking to Jeffrey Morris, CEO of the Roxbury Development Group. Thank you for coming on today, Jeffrey.
Thank you for having me.
Excited about what you're going to bring to the city. Just a quick PSA on Saturday, it's September 11th at 7 o'clock down at Heritage Port. We'll be having a September 11th remembrance ceremony. The Wheeling Symphony is going to be doing a musical interlude or prelude at 6:45, so try to stop down if you can. The city's co-hosting this with Rabbi Lee from Temple Shalom. You've been listening to Your Wheeling No Two Ways About It on The Watchdog. We'll see you next week.